So we are live here with Dylan from Aura. For those of you guys who aren't familiar, Aura is pretty much the most popular repricer on the market now. Most sellers are using this. It's really like using a repricer. We've made post after post after post, guys, in the past couple months. Using a repricer is so important because you just can't physically reprice your stuff fast enough. And also, I mean, we've had a lot of coaching students. Even this past week, we had a bunch of students who's like, "Oh, my stuff isn't selling. Are you repricing it?" No. Boom, they reprice it. Boom, they sell out of all their stuff.
Immediately up, yeah.
Like, it's like that is the number one reason why your stuff isn't selling. It's because you're not repricing. So we've got Dylan here from Aura. He's going to sort of break down sort of what Aura is, what reprices are, how to use it, some basics for you guys who are just now getting into it. I'm going to post a link down below where you can sign up for Aura. They've got a cool 2-week trial. We even have our own little Hustle Buddies discount code, so make sure you guys are using that as well. But yeah, Dylan, take it away, man.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks, man. It's cool to hear you say we're now the most popular repricing tool. So that's kind of awesome to hear, man. It gets me pumped.
Yeah.
Definitely gets me pumped, man. And so that's awesome. So I'm going to share my screen. Usually I keep this kind of casual and we'll still keep it that way, but I do have a presentation. It's just a little bit easier to kind of structure things out. So I'll share my screen. We'll kind of start walking through that. And make this guy full screen here. Sorry, I got to move all the Zoom garb around. There we go. Okay, so first and foremost, we're going to talk about like what is repricing, how we approach it, especially from the strategy standpoint, because I think most people understand conceptually what repricing is, although we will touch on that. A lot of people don't understand how do you build a strategy. And unfortunately, a lot of what we are told as sellers, because I come at this from having been a seller myself, is actually wrong. So we're going to touch on like my favorite 3 myths that we're told as Amazon sellers, and I'll explain to you why they're myths, and I'll kind of prove my point there. And then we'll actually build that strategy out together if we have time.
Awesome. Love it.
That way it's very tactical. You're like, cool, I get it conceptually. Now let's go build this thing out and get that going. So a little bit about me. So I got started like most Amazon sellers doing, retail arbitrage, then went to online arbitrage. And similar to a lot of Amazon sellers, I find most people go one of 2 paths. You either go the wholesale or the private label route at some point because you're like, I need to scale. And, it's a little bit easier to do that when you can play in the bulk realm, right? So went that route, went the wholesale route. Eventually started and co-founded BinDrive CRM. Then, of course, Aura, started Wholesale Made Easy, which is a podcast, wrote copious amounts of blog posts for free. Now have the Welcome to Growth podcast. I mean, we geek out on the education side very heavily. So when I say I'm a nerd, I truly mean that, and I don't mean that as a negative. So I'm Dylan. I'm one of the co-founders. I pretty much head up a lot of our customer success, a lot of our operations, a lot of our growth, a lot of our marketing, and then my co-founder James heads up a lot of the product and engineering side. So I'm nerdy, but not as nerdy as James, I'd like to say. So I got to throw that out there. So, a quick definition, if you're like, cool, I've heard this term repricing, but no idea what that even remotely means because it's new to me. I get it. All we're doing is we're accepting the fact that price is a major factor on the Amazon platform, right? I think we can all agree on that here. Because it's so important, how quickly you can stay competitive and keep your prices competitive relative to other sellers on a listing is paramount to your success, right? You're joking a second ago about, some students saying, things aren't really moving. And the moment you turn on a repricing, it doesn't even have to be a great repricer.
Yeah.
You turn on a repricer and you have sales go up at least 10%, in my opinion. What we're doing though is we're taking things that you would do yourself, the decisions, you're doing these calculations, you're seeing what's happening, and you're updating your prices. And we're just moving that to a computer that can do that 24/7. And it does not matter how many SKUs you have. Mm-hmm. So if you're considering when do I get started with repricing versus when I don't, from what I've seen with our data, if you're less than 5,000 in monthly sales or less than 20 SKUs, depending on your business model, I don't think it's a good enough fit. I think it's a little too soon, right? Because and this is the guy who runs a repricing tool. It's not a silver bullet, right? It's certainly going to help. But having been an Amazon seller for a number of years, previously, listen, I understand how quick you go from, zero monthly expenses to like $2,000 for like SaaS subscriptions.
Exactly. And really in an inventory-based business, like you need to be buying inventory to make your business work.
Right. 100%. Yeah. I would rather you have a business
yes,
than pay us
exactly.
money. So, but once you're over that, now it's like, okay, the ROI is there. Now you're immediately going to see an increase in sales. Two, you're going to see your profits, increase as well, of course. But more importantly, you're saving yourself time. Right. And so you're taking, let's say 3-4 hours a day, really, from some of the sellers that I've seen, that's distributed throughout 24 hours, and you're reallocating that to family, if that's important to you, if you have that, to growing the business, right? Maybe it's sourcing, maybe it's contacting new wholesale suppliers if you're wanting to go that route, or maybe it's, spending more time doing OA and RA. So it gets to a point where it just doesn't scale. Could you do this manually? Of course you can. And we'll talk about that in one of the myths. But at the end of the day, we're just taking this decision, we're handing it to a computer, and we're just saying, just do it 24/7. I don't care how many SKUs I have, just go, man. So high level overview. Now let's kind of shift over into some of these myths. So one, my favorite, which used to be true, is that repricing tools just lower your price. Certainly it's a major factor. And I think it's something, we need to talk about. So, in the old days, as I like to say, that's pretty much what they did. Right. But we know basic economics. I can tank your price, increase sales. You're not happy about that because you made no money. The difference between like Amazon's free pricing system, which we get asked all the time, like, hey, Amazon's got a repricer. It's free. Why don't I just use that? Because they're literally not even able to raise your price. Like, it's not even built into the tool. And they don't want your price higher. They want your price lower. I want to make you more money. So at the end of the day, yes, we are lowering your price strategically. And we'll talk about that when we get to like the strategy behind what we typically, recommend doing. But I care about you making money. You're in a business for a reason. You have bills to pay. You didn't get started with this so you can, sell $1 million a year worth of inventory to make 5 pennies in net profit, right? Doesn't make sense. So that's the major one. And a lot of people still promote this. Oh, repricers just tank your price. Not true. And we're going to break that down a little bit further. Number 2, repricing below the competition is stupid, short-sighted, and unfair. I love this one because I used to believe it. I used to believe what everybody said, don't be a penny chaser. Don't blah, blah, blah. Don't take the price. And listen, tanking the price is a problem. But what we're going to talk about today is not tanking the price. It's strategy. And fortunately, I've had access to a large number of sellers. My sample size is thousands upon thousands of users now. The difference between those who grow and scale very large Amazon businesses and those who do not and continue to struggle, a lot of times does come down to this. We have sellers that do $5-7 grand a month and sellers that do $1 million a month on our system. The ones that are doing $1 million a month are very competitive on their pricing, and that's by strategy. So when you see somebody doing this, don't go, oh, well, that person's just tanking the price. They don't know what they're doing. They might know more than you. And it's worth considering that the question of maybe they know something that I don't. I think it's too easy for us as Amazon sellers to say, well, that looks stupid to me. It might look that way, but is it, right? You really need to think those things through. And then number 3, which I already kind of, touched on, I can just do this myself. When you're getting started, you should, in my opinion. I think you should, because you still need to understand the dynamics that are going on, right? And if you have 5 SKUs, you can do that manually. It's fine.
Yeah, I remember when we were first starting. Yeah, when we were first starting, I mean, we were teachers. And so like I was repricing it in the morning before school. I was repricing it on my lunch break, repricing it during my study hall, repricing it as soon as I got home. I was doing like 3-4 times a day. And it worked at the beginning, but eventually, too many SKUs.
It just gets too much time. Right. It gets too big, and unfortunately, you don't want to do it when you're sleeping. You really don't want to do it when you're trying to go to the movies with your spouse, right? And so can you do this when you're getting started by yourself? Of course you can do that manually. However, if you are growing a business, if you are trying to scale that business, it's not worth your time, because at the end of the day, Aura's $97 a month. We're not the most expensive. We're not the cheapest, and that's by design. It gets cheaper the larger you get, because we have one pricing tier, right? Exactly. So that's the thing to keep in mind. Like, it might seem expensive when you get started, but if you're like, I'm trying to add, an extra 50 to maybe 300 grand in sales this year, it's really not that expensive when you look at the number of price changes we're able to do versus you by yourself, right? Because do you really want to be doing work that you're technically getting paid like 5 cents per hour to do? Or do you want a computer to do it? Right?
Exactly.
You got to factor that in. So those are my 3
we always love to break down like the percentages. Like if a repricer gets you like, I don't know, 10% more sales at a worst case scenario, which that's like low ball.
Yeah.
But if a repricer gets you 10% more sales, at what point is 10% more sales equal to the price of that repricer per month?
Yeah, and the way we approach it too. So we do have a 14-day free trial. It's considered an ungated trial. That means we do not require a credit card upfront.
Mm-hmm.
So I tell people, if they're like, I'm kind of on the fence, I'm not sure. I'm like, literally jump in for free. Don't give us your credit card and reprice for 14 days. Make the extra $100, and then you technically didn't come out of pocket, right?
Yep.
So that's by design too. I'm like, hey, make this super easy, frictionless. If you hate it, you can just leave us. We can't hold you liable for anything. You're gone. But if you love it, it's kind of paid for itself already. So yeah, I agree with that kind of logic there. So that's cool. Okay. So let's shift gears over to the strategy and like, not just building the strategy. We'll certainly do that, but let's think through the way we approach it. So, okay, we went over the myths. We can agree on that. Let's talk about what we call the oscillation strategy. If you look at the buy box data over time, what does it do? It goes up and down, which makes sense. It's economics, right? Economic supply and demand does not mean there's a actual fixed point. Demand's going to fluctuate. Supply is going to fluctuate. Therefore, equilibrium will also go up and down. Okay, so if that's the case, what happens when we try to take control of that? Well, a lot of things happen. Actually, sales increase. So how do we do that? Well, we have to take advantage of what is baked into the platform itself. We know that Amazon prefers the best offer, and they define the best offer as the lowest offer. Okay, so how do we increase sales? Well, we beat the buy box by a penny. Okay, whether we agree with it or not, that's how you do it, right? So, we can have opinions all day long, but that's the data, that's how it works. Okay, that helps me increase sales, but it doesn't help me make more money in terms of net profit per unit. But what does is resetting our price to a max price once we've reached a min price. So we have this two-stage kind of thing, right? So basically we create this loop. So what we want to do is we want to increase the volume of sales by repricing below by a penny. So we're staying competitive, but resetting our price higher every time we reach our minimum price. Every time we reset higher, we now increase the average net profit per unit. This is very important. I'll talk about this on the next slide a little bit more, but resetting that higher price point negates this whole idea of tanking. Mm-hmm. So when you see somebody repricing below by a penny, you need to consider the fact that maybe they're doing this strategy and they're not actually tanking the price. They're trying to increase the volume of sales. And listen, if you can just hold and maintain your average net profit per unit, but increase volume, you won. Mm-hmm. And don't be afraid of dropping price a little bit. Because my analogy here is, let's say I drop your price by 20 cents per unit. You're like, I'm losing 20 cents per unit. Well, one, no, you're not, because your minimum price is set to like 100% ROI. So you're still good, right? You're not losing anything. You're giving up opportunity, which I get. But in doing so, let's say we increase your sales volume by 20%. Mm-hmm. You made more money in total by lowering your price.
Love it.
Economics, right? So we have to get away, and we'll talk about this here. We have to get away from this idea of maximizing net profit, so unit economics. We need to talk about the average or the total profit for a given period of time, right? Mm-hmm. So I keep telling people your Amazon business is really just a compound equation. So if you're holding inventory for 3 months because you're like, oh, but it's going to be 500% ROI. Okay, but jump into Google Sheets or Excel real quick, run that analysis and say, okay, I'm going to get 500% ROI for selling that one time, but I'm going to hold it for 3 months. Or I can sell it for 80% ROI today and spend that same capital 8 times in the next 3 months. When you compound that, you made more money in total. And that's something to consider. So a lot of people that and it's usually newer sellers that get uncomfortable saying, I'm going to lower my price a little bit because they think they're losing. You're actually not. You're being very strategic. And so, I mentioned early on that we're going to talk about things that really we're kind of taught, which is wrong. So I'm a finance major. We talk a lot about, stuff like that. Basic managerial accounting. We'll teach this kind of stuff. So, start reading some books for sure. But if you can get stuff like that to click, the trajectory of your Amazon business will dramatically change. At this point, we're not even talking repricing. We're just talking like, high level business stuff here, right? But this oscillation strategy really is designed to sit on top of that concept, right? How can we both increase volume of sales while at least maintaining the same average net profit per unit? In some instances, we actually have a higher average net profit per unit, which is a total win, right? We increase sales, we increase the average net profit. You're moving inventory. You don't have a capital liquidity problem anymore. You're like, dude, at this point, I just can't keep inventory in FBA long enough, because the moment it hits, we're selling, and like, I gotta spin right now. Now it's a job in the sense of it's a hustle in the sense of you gotta go buy more inventory, man. That stuff's not sitting there now, right? You know, you can spend that same, let's say you have 10 grand. You can spend that 10 grand once in a month, or you can spend it twice in a month. And that's a compound. And if that clicks, you're like, okay, now this starts to make sense. So if you can make that shift, a lot's going to change. So we'll kind of shift over here if we have time and actually build this strategy, if that's cool. Does that work?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. All right, cool. So we'll build this actual oscillation strategy together.
And then,
so I'm just
at the end, guys,
count.
Real quick, at the end, guys, we're going to try to go through some questions. So if you do have questions while we're going, feel free to drop them in the comments section. And then once we're sort of done setting stuff up and showing you guys the basics, then we can kind of go through some of the questions that you all have.
Yeah. And what's great is this actually won't take more than like 10 minutes.
Perfect.
That's the cool thing. I like to build what I call robust strategies. They're robust in the sense of they handle a lot of situations automatically for us. And I'm not over engineering, so to speak, for one particular situation. I'll break that down as we go. So I'm just going to create a strategy here. We're going to start with the buy box targeting strategy, the pre-configured one, not the custom. The reason for that is a lot of my recommendations are built into this pre-configured strategy by default. So if you happen to miss something, that's okay, because it's probably set by default exactly where I would recommend you set it to. So if you're starting with a new strategy, even not the oscillation strategy is your own thing, I would still start here, because again, if you miss something, not the end of the world. You're probably still going to be good here. So we'll start with that guy, and we're actually skipping the competition type section. That's by design. But to highlight that, what are we doing for the competition? We're targeting the buy box itself. So a lot of people think, oh, well, I'm going to target the lowest FBA because that way I'm super competitive. Amazon's going to give me the buy box, but that's not always the case. Just being the lowest seller does not guarantee the buy box. Right? Being super high doesn't help. Being super low doesn't help. It's somewhere in the middle. Again, the buy box, consider it equilibrium in supply and demand, right? So why try to target the lowest FBA when we could just target the buy box directly? That's what we're going to do. Now, in pre-COVID times, I would recommend, if you are FBA, to reprice against merchant fulfilled offers by plus 2 to 3%, and then reprice below by a penny on FBA offers. Now, I'm not recommending that, excuse me. It's not the same climate. And I think we need to talk about it. I talk to users all day long, and I was talking to a guy yesterday. He's like, so what's this 2% rule with the buy box? I was like, it doesn't exist anymore. Yeah.
COVID got rid of it.
Yeah. It used to exist. It was awesome. It's not the case anymore. I hate to see it go, but that's okay. So the way I'm recommending it now, again, robust, make it super simple. Regardless of the type of offer in the buy box, I want it. I'm going to reprice below by a penny. I don't care if they're merchant fulfilled. I don't care if they're FBA Prime. It doesn't matter. I think at least right now, until things potentially change, and they may not, we need to get comfortable saying FBA is not necessarily better than merchant fulfilled anymore. Mm-hmm. They're different, but we need to factor that in.
Yep, 100%.
So that's the way I'm approaching it right now. So right now, we're not going to change anything. So we're repricing below by a penny against the buy box. If we wanted to get a little bit more advanced here and say, okay, I want to do merchant fulfilled here differently, Prime sellers here differently, and then Amazon here differently, we can do that. Don't over-engineer. Just make something that works for 80% of your inventory nice and easy. Now, robust, again, let's go ahead and automatically handle suppressed buy boxes. So what we're going to do is we're going to tell Aura, whenever the buy box becomes suppressed, because we're actually targeting the buy box, we're going to take our current price and lower it by 2 pennies every 2 to 3 minutes until one of two things happen. Either one, we reactivate the buy box, in which case we just go back to repricing as normal. Or two, we reach our minimum price, but we have not reactivated the buy box. If that's the case, Amazon is still telling us our price is too high, and it's probably better for us to sit at our min than at our max, right? Because again, basic economics here, right? We're probably going to at least get sales at our min price, not at our max, and we still want to move inventory. I know a lot of sellers don't care if the buy box is suppressed. They're like, oh, just target the lowest FBA. I still believe you should reactivate the buy box. 82% of organic sales come via that. So still worth it in my opinion. So that's good. Now we got phase 1 of the oscillation strategy already built, reprice below buy penny, but we need phase 2. Here's how we're going to do it. It's literally 2 settings. That's the fun part. So part 1 and part 2, cool, we're done. That's the oscillation strategy. Now these 2 top sections up here, we're going to replace the word competition with our competition type. It's going to add a little bit of clarity as to how this actually functions. So instead of reading this when the competition is below your min price, we're going to replace that word competition with our competition type, which is the buy box. And it's going to read when the buy box is below your min price. So what I have this set to do, and the one below that is when it matches your min price. So it's either at or below it. Just go to my min price. However, whenever I go to my min price, I'm going to tell Aura to take me to my max price. Again, we're trying to reset this price higher. That way we can oscillate, increase the average profit per unit over time. And that's it, right? Nice and easy. We'll turn on use max price when out of stock, hit continue. And then my favorite part of the strategy builder is the maintenance section. So we already said, I don't really care about your revenue. I care about your net profit. Right? Yeah, revenue is important. Don't get me wrong, but at any point I can increase your net profit. I want to do that. So the way the maintenance section works is it is a sub strategy that only takes over when you are in the buy box. Okay. So this is the way this is going to work. The way it's currently set up, which is what I recommend, which is raise price by 1 penny. It's going to say, okay, you're at $20 and in the buy box. Woohoo, you're winning. Not really, because there's actually another FBA seller at 25. Well, you want to sell closer to 25 than 20, right? So instead of going from 20 to 25, we're going to take you from 20 to 24.99, hence the penny. So the penny is the difference, or the value that is in this field is the difference between the next lowest FBA seller and where we take you. So this is similar to repricing below buy penny. Now, if we wanted to match the 25, we can change the 1 penny to a 0 and we can match it. What I recommend here is 1 to 2 pennies. If you want to be a little bit more conservative too, I don't think anything more than 2 really makes sense. So basically, we're making sure that you're never caught being the lowest price seller in the buy box when you could be making more money. But we're also not just raising your price until you get kicked out of the buy box or suppress it and then pull it back. I hear this all the time. I like the idea. The problem with it though is, let's say you're at 25 bucks. We start to raise your price. You get to 26 bucks. And now Amazon suppresses it. You're like, okay, well, we had the buy box at, let's say, $25.99. So we can just go back there, right? In theory. But what happens now when Amazon doesn't give you the buy box back at 25 or at 24, but it will give it back to you at 23? So you raised your price, which, by the way, probably lowered sales because that's how economics works. And now you got the buy box at $2 less than you could have had it before. So instead of taking that approach, which again, I like the idea behind it, but when we look at the data, it doesn't really work that way. 100% of the time, we're looking at it as, how do we raise your price to increase net profits, but also maintain a high probability of you maintaining the buy box at the same time? Because if you're going to raise it and increase potential profits, but negate any sales, it's irrelevant to me. Right? You still want to get sales. So this is the way the maintenance section is going to work. Super clutch. Love it. And then your min-max prices. We'll spend just a minute here because it's subjective to every seller. I have rarely seen it make sense for sellers to manually set both their mins and maxes in total. Actually, I've only seen one seller where that really truly made sense. The way I recommend this is to automatically set your min prices using either ROI, which I'm a huge fan of, or profit margin, whatever you're using in your business. Kind of just have to pick one. However, max prices based on the strategy we're building here do not make sense to automatically set. The problem here is one of 2 things. Either you set it too high, in which case, or it takes you to your max, nobody follows you up because you took your price from 20 to 80 bucks. Nobody's following you up here. Or 2, you set it too low where, we're coming up on Q4 faster than we think. And let's say you set it at 80 bucks for your max automatically, and now the buy box is at 85.90. Or it can't go outside your min max. So you're stuck at 80. So you negate potential upside. So what I recommend here is, again, automatically setting your min prices, manually setting your max. The way you can do that in here though let's say we're going to do ROI. Let's say I'm going to do 20% min. I just leave the max field empty and hit review strategy, and we're good. So nice and easy. So I can go in and manually set those. There's a few ways that I recommend, manually setting a max price. But it does range, right? So it depends on the price point of the buy box. If it's $300, I'm going to set that different than if it's a $20 item. And you don't want them to be super wide. A lot of people think, okay, my min maxes need to be huge, right? I want my maxes $500, $1,000, because listen, if somebody's going to pay me $1,000 for that $20 item, I'll take it. But the reality is nobody's going to. So what you want is you want a tight range. I know it seems, again, different than what we're told. But think about this. If we're doing this oscillation type of strategy, we don't want a huge range because, again, people are not going to follow us up. And we want a tight enough range where people are going to move with us. So as the price point of the buy box itself gets lower, my range gets tighter. So if the buy box is, let's say, at $15, my range there between my min and max is maybe $1.50 to $2. As the buy box increases, so like I used to sell it a wholesale item, it retailed for $329.95. That's not a $2 range. That's like a $10 range, right? Because it's feasible for somebody to actually pay an extra $10 for that, depending on the climate and what's going on, from a competitive landscape. So that's the way I approach it, right? So you want them to be tight, but it's relative to the price itself. It's normal to have a large fluctuation with or a larger fluctuation with a higher price item than it is a lower price item. So hopefully that makes sense. Again, I'm Mr. Automation. I'm like the nerdy millennial who, like, if a computer can do it, I'm not doing it. Like I had like an AI app the other day schedule a haircut for me because I didn't want to do it. However, I say that to say, when doing something manually increases performance enough, I'm still going to tell you to do it manually because performance matters at the end of the day, right? I like this whole idea of, efficiency and effectiveness. Listen, efficiency is important, but if you are not effective, you are efficiently ineffective, which means it's not going to get you anywhere. So I would rather you be effective first. So let's be efficient on the mins. Easy, right? You're setting those at, we just did 20%. Min ROI. If I want to go change 10,000 listings from 20 to 40% because it's Q4 now, I make one change, hit save, or updates. I move on with my life. Maxes are different though. Hopefully that makes sense.
Love it.
And last thing here, the way you the way you name your strategy is very important because you're just seeing the name. And listen, you got a lot going on. You got a business, you got a family, right? You don't want to remember every setting inside of your strategy, especially when you have like 5 or 7 of them, right? So what I do is I bake into the name what is baked into the strategy. So this one, I know I'm targeting the buy box. So I have a little shortcut there. So I'll do buy box. You see all my little versions of this that I built out. Then what am I doing? Well, I'm doing the oscillation strategy, but let's say I don't really remember what that is. Okay, well, I'm repricing below by a penny. So I can say price, if I can type, and we'll just do -1, right? Repricing below by a penny. And then reset price. Okay, so we got the competition section. We have the pursuit section. Now we need the maintenance section. What are we doing there? Well, we're trying to maximize price. So I could just say max price. Or if I wanted to be a little bit more granular, I could say raise price. Right. And then how am I setting my mins and maxes, which is very important because you might have the same 3 strategies and the only difference is the minimum price, right? Some are going to be 0% because it's like your liquidation strategy or you're just more aggressive. Some might be, 50% min ROI. So I want to put that in here. So I'm just going to say min 20 per, we'll just do 20 ROI. And then max, we'll just say man for manual. Okay, so if I go in here, I can read through this and know what's baked into the strategy. I don't have to go, I don't know what's in that, and then have to go to the strategy setting and then go through the, oh, that's right, and then assign it. It's like, that should have been like a 2-second, task. And now it's like 5 minutes later, don't want to do that. And let's take this a step further. Because for whatever reason, I literally love emojis now. I use them far too frequently, but let's say this is our main strategy. I still got 7 of them, but this is my default. Okay, let's make that easy. Let's find one of these, put a little rocket there. I don't even need to read it now. I just look for the rocket and assign that one, and I move on. Let's say this is our liquidation strategy. Okay, you know what I like for liquidation strategies? Fire, because we're burning it all down, right? I don't know. That's where my mind goes. Cool. So now I don't need to look for my liquidation settings. I just go fire, done, literally. Easy, right? And certainly if you want to get, super simple with it, we could do like liquidation strategy, right? We could do that. For a liquidation type of strategy, I think that's completely fine to put here. But for your strategies where you're going to have variations of it, you want it to be as detailed as possible. You want to be able to understand what is baked into this guy. And then once we do that, we get some confetti, which is nice. We get to celebrate a little bit. But that is the entirety of building a strategy. It's really not that complex. I know it's overwhelming when you're first getting started because you're like, one, what strategy, high level, am I following? Two, how do I create it? Is this just going to tank my price, which is a very important question to ask? And is this going to make sure that I still maintain profits? Or is it just going to take all my prices to zero? It's something to keep in mind, right? So just a few quick highlights on, just to kind of wrap this up, we'll shift over into Q&A. Okay, so a few tips. What we just covered, right? How you name your strategies does matter. It seems like a very small, negligible thing to do, but I promise you, it really starts to take effect when you have 5 to 7 strategies, especially when you just have a few slight variations where the only difference is your minimum ROI percentage. Two, let Aura do a lot of the heavy lifting, which is what we talked about previously. Let it automatically calculate and set your min prices for you because it can. It's going to factor in your costs. It's going to factor in the fees. It's going to factor in, the minimum profit you want. And it's easy to change that 2 to a 4 for 5, 10, 100,000 listings. Maxes, again, those are different. I still recommend manually setting those. Number 3, use the uploads feature. So a lot of people don't know this. The uploads feature has a pre-filled Aura template. You download that guy. You can make changes in that file and re-upload it and have Aura make changes for you. So let's say I've got 5,000 listings and I've got 5 minutes to, let's say I want to assign a specific strategy and toggle on repricing for all of them. How do I do that in 5 minutes? Well, I'm going to go to that file, download it, apply the strategy ID, copy it all the way down, set the repricing enabled column from false to true all the way down, save it, upload it, submit, I'm done. So I can actually do that in like less than 2 minutes if I wanted to.
Yep. So
you can get a lot of things changed. You can certainly, you can manually add mins and maxes in that file. Again, strategy assignment, repricing toggling on and off, assign costs, map prices. I mean, there's like 5 to 7 things you can really get done in that file. That's really going to be faster for you to use that than like the bulk actions, in my opinion. And just lastly, use the help desk. So if you go to help.goaura.com, there are a ton of documentation there, a ton of guides of, okay, here's how you do X, Y, and Z, right? And if you get stuck and you're like, cool, still cannot find my answer, support is here. Like I like to say, when you start to work with us, you get a team of repricing nerds on your team. That's the way I want us to be, and that's the way we have been. I don't want you to feel, because again, I've been a seller. I understand what it's like to jump into all these tools and kind of feel alone and just be like, I know I need to get a lot done here, and I'm sure I can, but I don't know how. Or heck, you just have a busy day. I told somebody yesterday, I was like, listen, if you're like, dude, I've got 5 minutes and I need about an hour's worth of work done in my Aura account to like assign strategy and blah, blah, blah. And I don't have the time because my kid's sick or whatever. I don't even need a reason. Jump into support and say, hey, can you guys do X, Y, or Z for me? We're going to be like, yeah, give us 10 minutes and we're going to knock it out, get it done. And we're going to save you some time. So lean on us, utilize us. Obviously, we can't offer 24/7 support at the moment. We are still a small team. We had somebody kind of get frustrated with us about that. And I totally understand. We are a small team. Nothing is outsourced here, by the way. We don't have VAs or anything like that. It's all in-house people. But during business hours, we got you covered. And if there's anything major, I'm happy to jump in at any point, even on weekends. But yeah, utilize us. Don't feel like you're alone. Feel like, you know what, I'm just going to ping my repricing nerds over here and let them do my bidding.
I love it.
So that's like high level, but yeah, we can kind of shift back over into, I'll stop sharing my screen here and we'll jump over into some Q&A.
Awesome. Yeah. Let's see, switch that. Okay. Yeah, unfortunately I can't show the comments up on my screen. I wasn't able to get my, my streaming software to work today, but let me go through a couple of these. Okay, so we were sort of touching on this as far as like automating your min or manually setting your max. Tracy on Facebook asked, she would really like advice about strategy for super cheap items, stuff like that she's buying for 25 cents, but it sells for 40 times that much. It doesn't seem to be a consistent variable that she can do between all of them.
Yeah. So ROI is beautiful, except for when your costs are less than, I would say, $5, right? Because what's 20% of $5? Like, who really cares? So here's what I recommend, and it's not one we went over, but it is built into the pricing section. I would actually recommend for all items that have a cost of, I would say $5 or less. You could really go $3 though. It kind of depends. I would set them at a fixed profit. So it's actually a dollar amount. So instead of saying, 20% ROI, you would say $2 in net profit. It seems to make a little bit more sense. So I would first try that and say, okay, minimum $5, minimum $20 net profit. You're going to have to basically, bucket listings. So I'm a big fan of creating strategies for different buckets or types of listings, right?
Yep, that's exactly what I tell people.
Perfect. Yeah, exactly. It makes sense, right? And by bucket, I mean, I might have a wholesale bucket. I might have an RA bucket. I also might have a bucket of wholesale and RA things, but have a low cost. So it's my low cost bucket or my high cost bucket.
And if you have a whole lot of like one specific type, I mean, we're talking in Hustle Buddies, a big thing in Hustle Buddies, there's a lot of people who sell bras from Kohl's. So it's like, it's very easy to bucket every single bra. You just search for the keyword bra, boom, there's all your items, export them, and then you can manually set the mins and maxes only for your bra listings. And they're all basically going to function the same because you're paying between like $5 to $10 for each of those. So
right, exactly. So that's what I would recommend for low cost items, because they can be kind of painful when you're talking automatically setting those. And one of the things we're looking at building out as a tool I guess a tool, but it's a feature really called workflows. So I want you to be able to do what you just said automatically and say, okay, you know what? If the SKU contains the word bra, just assign strategy A, which is your bra category strategy, and toggle on repricing. So I want to be able to create this routing system where you tell Aura, here's how I would typically assign this strategy versus that strategy. And then it'll just do it for you. But yeah, so just to answer the question, fixed profit, that's what I would look at first. It doesn't work 100%. But try that first. You might have to manually, again, there are situations where you do just have to manually set min prices.
Yep. All right. So another this is a bunch of people ask this similar question, so I'm just going to paraphrase it.
I love it.
How does this work with merchant fulfilled or FBM orders? Like, does it incorporate shipping costs? Is this something that you would recommend for FBM? Is it something like don't really bother with it for FBM? What is your take on it?
Yeah, I still recommend it for merchant fulfilled, even if you're 100% merchant fulfilled. Now, a lot of people say, how does Aura factor in costs? We have to keep in mind there are two costs of shipping that are coming in. There is the cost of shipping that you pay, and then there's the cost of shipping that you charge the customer. So we are automatically factoring in from Amazon's API what you charge the customer. So we look at what's called the landed price. So it's not just the price, it's the total amount charged to the customer. So
yes, and that would be, for you guys watching this, that would be what you set in your FBM template when you list the item. Like if your template says I charge $8 plus 99 cents per pound, then you sell a 2-pound item and you're going to be charging somebody $10. Aura is going to know that $10 is added automatically to your sale price.
Yeah. So what you don't want to do is be like, oh, well, Aura says my, let's say Aura says my min price is $20, but you're like, but my cost is, or my shipping charge is $10, and then my price is $10. I thought my price would be $20. Nope, landed price. It's the total amount. A lot of people get confused there. Now, we are not automatically factoring in what you pay, what you truly pay as an expense for shipping costs. That's different. Right now, we just have a single cost field, so you would have to factor that in there, right? So you would just need to know, okay, I'm going to pay $7 for that unit. For shipping. And we just bake that into the cost field. What we want to do, because we're actually about to go undergo a massive rebuild, which is why we're in like a new office now. New engineers, all that good stuff.
Love it.
But we're actually going to itemize the cost field because initially we're like, one cost makes sense, easy. And we're like, nope, it doesn't now. Because you have your buy cost, you have your shipping costs, you have prep fees, right? You might have miscellaneous stuff you want to factor in there. So it really needs to be pulled out, especially with us integrating with Inventory Lab. All we're pulling from Inventory Lab actually is your active cost per unit. So we're not factoring in shipping or anything like that there. So you can still do it, but it's going to be a manual process right now. But to answer the question, we're automatically factoring in what you charge the customer or the consumer, but what you actually are paying, that's going to be a different situation that you'll have to manually account for.
And on our end, guys, like for sellers, you should be trying to create your templates so that it roughly averages out to breaking even. I mean, some you're going to pay a little more, some you're going to pay a little bit less, but you want to set your templates in for FBM shipments where it sort of averages out to a normal number. All right. We've got our local Canadian friend. He wants to know, this is a more advanced question. He wants to know if you're able to like reorder the different columns and things like in the reporting tab, if that's
on the
possible or if that's,
Yeah. So not at the moment. This is why we're doing a full rebuild, not just releasing a new feature. Because what I want you to be able to do, so keep in mind, I use the tool daily. So like all your frustrations, I get, and I'm with you. I'm on your side here on that one. So what I want is for you to, one, not only be able to reorganize it, but to like negate looking at some columns. Because sometimes I'm like, I don't really care to look at this column. Just get it out of my face. Or I want to reorganize it, basically I want you to be able to create a unique view for your data and how you view it, right? Also, that header needs to be sticky. It needs to scroll with you. I know it doesn't right now, and that's super painful because you're like, am I looking at the buy box price or my price right now? I always forget that one. But yeah, so that everything you see on the actual app itself visually is gonna change. It's gonna be way easier to use.
Awesome. Yeah, we're excited for you for all the big overhauls going down.
It's a lot. It's gonna take time.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many. Yeah, we're very excited. I actually had a question that I was answered because I was watching your screen. So I was going to ask, we actually have a lot of people who are jumping on over into Walmart. I was going to ask if that's something you guys had on your horizon, but I already saw like when you were repricing things, like what platform are you on? Amazon, eBay, or Walmart? So apparently you guys can reprice for those?
Right now it's just Amazon. We put those there mainly as a feedback loop. Just to see if people like, hey, like, is that actually coming? I wanted to see, is this actually needed, right? Because you can ask people all day long, but when people are like, hey, like, I can't do that, I'm trying to do it, that's different. So we do want to do that. And, PSA, public service announcement, we have not released new features in a hot minute. That has been strategic. We mentioned this offline, but that has been strategic. We decided once I obviously graduated because that kind of helped free up some mental capacity.
What? You couldn't run a business and be in college.
Who knew? Crazy. That's kind of, a pain in the butt. But Aura grew faster than we thought it would in a great way, like literally leaps and bounds. I mean, it continues to grow. But we decided, we don't want to be a lifestyle business. I'm really over people that were Amazon sellers, looking at myself here, that wanted to go into software and then they just turn into a lifestyle business and nothing really changes. I don't want that. So what we decided to do was to triple down on Aura. And that meant some long-term kind of decision-making. Like we're making like 10, 20-year long decisions here. And so we decided, okay, well, at the time we were remote, that we don't think makes sense for what we're trying to accomplish here. Not that remote's a bad thing, but we wanted to be co-located. So we actually got an office, which took a long period of time to find, especially at the height of COVID, in Boston, in the city. So we had to get that set up, get, personal moves, all that good stuff. We're shifting gears again over into hiring 2 new engineers. Like we don't hire developers, by the way. We hire engineers, which is different. Because we've had a lot of people like, oh, just get like a VA developer. I'm like, nope, you don't want us to do that with the complexity that is repricing, because it's really technically complex.
And if you did that, you might turn into Amazon seller support, where everything has been outsourced and it really sucks.
Yeah, and you don't want that. You really don't. I assure you, it sounds awesome, but it's really not in reality. But with that, we've also realized, you know what, we could just release some features, or we could do a complete rebuild that will enable us to build way more advanced features that, by the way, no other repricing tool has yet to release. And we couldn't do that if we don't do a full rebuild. So it's going to take time. We're being strategic here. But if you can just be patient with us a little bit longer, I promise you it'll be worth it, because I'm pushing, man. Like literally, I moved my entire life from Florida to the city of Boston. Like we're doing this thing.
Yeah.
So
you guys are blowing up. I love it.
Yeah.
All right. David, this is a more specific question. So David has some listings where if he's pricing below by 1 penny, he feels like he's not yet winning the buy box, and he actually has to go like 5 to 10 cents below whoever has the buy box in order to beat it from them. Do you have any feedback on that?
Yeah, there's a few variables there. One, I would say, just so we can take a more granular look, reach out to support with that, with at least, at least one SKU that's doing that. If you have a handful, send those over to, so we can take a look and tell you specifically, like, it's this variable. Amazon had a glitch recently. It was not a glitch. It was intentional, by the way. I was even like, yeah, I think this is a glitch. And then I'm like, no, actually, this is probably intentional. They were slowing down sales intentionally for fulfillment reasons, which they do once a year, by the way. That's a normal thing they do. We're always like, oh, why is this happening again? It's like every year, cyclical. But one of the things they did start to factor in a little bit more was seller feedback. Not only the quality of which you have, but the number of which you have too. So unfortunately, some sellers who did not have good quality seller feedback, did not have a lot of it, got hit hard in terms of being able to even pull the buy box. I'm not saying that's the case happening here, but it's something to consider and take a look at now. So a lot of sellers are like, well, I can't control that. Yes, you can. I'm sorry, but yes, you can. You can control the quality of your inventory. You can control how you communicate with customers, and you can actually at least influence, increasing your seller feedback. There are things you can do. Private label sellers do this all the time. We can do it too. So, consider that. It could be, if you're going up against Amazon, that could certainly be a thing. Amazon sells on different seller IDs. A lot of people don't know this. There's like dozens upon dozens of them. We find new ones all the time. So there's different teams. So certain listings, certain teams might be more aggressive in the sense of allowing you to have the buy box really easily. And some, they will never allow you to have it no matter how hard you're repricing. So if you hear it an Amazon seller and they're like, oh yeah, I destroy Amazon all the time on listings. I'm like, you do, but not everybody. It's not because you're special. You're getting lucky right now. Trust me, that will change.
It entirely depends on the listing.
It totally does. There's 5 to 7 variables in my mind immediately that we need to take a look at to be able to be like, it's probably this. I mean, honestly, it was something we experimented too with another seller, is just increasing and this is on the wholesale side. So increasing the amount of, the quantity. Oh my gosh. I was like, it's probably not going to have that big of an impact. It did.
Massive.
Way more than I thought. And this, like, I've been doing this for like a while. I'm like, it's probably going to increase sales, 5-10%. No, it was a lot. And it does make sense rationally when you think about it, right? You've got more, regional, national, coverage. You're going to get more of the regional buy boxes now, right? It's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we're getting towards the end of the questions. Cool. Someone said they have about 600 SKUs. If you had to estimate like time to set this up, if they're not using any repricer, how long, like if you're trying to import all 600 SKUs, about how long is this person, how much time are they going to have to set apart in their day?
Let's look at the total onboarding for what you will need to do. One, connect your marketplace. That's going to take probably 2 minutes to do, right? It's what we have to do. We're automatically going to import your SKUs from Seller Central. That's probably going to take 30 minutes to 60 minutes. It depends on if we have, one large person who jumps on with like like 300,000 SKUs at the same time, right?
But that's not your time. That's just like automatic. It pulls it over.
Automatic.
It'll take 30 minutes, but it's not you working for 30 minutes.
It could be 5 minutes, right? So I tell people, hey, connect your marketplace, go grab a coffee, come back. It's probably going to be there. The next thing you're going to want to do is obviously create a strategy. We just went over that. And if you're still, kind of stuck or confused, just reach out to support and say, hey, can you add the oscillation strategy to my account, please? But got you covered. We'll have that in there in 5-10 minutes. And then you'll need to, if you're automatically setting your min prices, even if you're not, you still need to get your costs in there. So if you're using Inventory Lab, you can toggle that on both sides. That's still going to take like 48 hours for us to really be able to import all your costs. But there is a workaround. So if you're like, Dylan, I have 10 minutes to set up Aura and get to repricing, I'm going to ask you for a handful of things. I'm going to ask you to export a inventory valuation report from Inventory Lab, which will include your costs. I'm going to ask you to connect your marketplace and what strategy you want. And I can have all of that uploaded and repricing enabled, barring any wait on Seller Central giving us SKUs in 10 minutes.
Awesome. This is another really good question, a really common misconception. So Michael said, should we be setting our high and low price or your min max price in Inventory Lab when you're listing? And then will that carry over into Aura?
So not now. This is why we need more engineers, because engineer capacity is a finicky thing. Right now, we're only importing your costs. So very important that we're not importing those automatically. Now, you can still get them. So the workaround there is, because I get workflow is important, right? A lot of people still like setting those in Inventory Lab because it's right there in front of your face, not against that. What I would recommend you doing, though, is exporting a closed batch report for each shipment. And then if you just literally export that file, you don't make any changes to it, and you upload it into Aura, we'll actually be able to apply those min-maxes for you. The only caveat there is that you have to wait for the SKUs to be in Aura. So typically what we see is within about 30 minutes to 60 minutes on average from you completing a shipment, we're able to get the SKU, but that does range. Like I've seen it take 24 to 48 hours. So really, that's the hard part of, sitting on top of the Amazon data. You have to wait for them to actually make it available. But I typically tell people, go ahead and download the closed batch once you're done. So you get the file, you don't have to grab it, wait till the next morning, jump into Aura. They're probably there by now, upload that file. Your min maxes are there.
Yeah, that's actually, I was going to, because other people are asking like, oh, can we see you like creating these buckets, or can we see this or that, the other? It's hard to do like on a live show, but after this, maybe later this week, I can have Alicia record something of, because we always export those closed batches. Like that's just how we reprice things.
Nice. Yep.
So I export that. I like to do like our own, I set things manually, but that just means I'm just doing something in Excel. Like
I was about to say, if you want to get fancy, I mean, so I did a webinar where I was like, okay, let's look at how you can really control your entire account with Excel. And so I said, like, basically that workflow idea that I had that I want us to build, I just did it in Excel. I said, if the SKU contains bra, use strategy, blah, blah, blah. Or if it doesn't, use strategy, blah, blah, blah. Right. And so you can get crazy with it, which I'm a finance major. So like literally my last textbook was the Excel Bible for 2019. So like that stuff's easy to me. But yeah, that's when it gets fun.
Yep. Awesome. All right. I think that pretty much covers all the big questions that I saw. So yeah, we really appreciate you coming out and giving us the lowdown, breaking down like how to set everything up, Dylan. I think it's super, super helpful. I think, again, I mean, I said this at the beginning, Aura is by far, like we're in, I run Hustle Buddies, but I'm a part of a lot of Amazon Facebook groups, and Aura is like by far the most popular.
Awesome. Thank you.
As far as I'm aware, this is sort of like becoming what most mid-sized sellers are using.
And we want to be the gold standard. That's our goal this year. I want to be the first choice.
Be the Inventory Lab of the repricing world.
Yes. And I'll be the first to say we have a long way to go, and that's a good thing. We're climbing the mountain here. We don't want to just compete on price. We literally want people to be like, no other tool does that thing, and that thing saves me 2 hours a week. Easy, done.
Yep.
So we got a long ways to go, but we're working at it. But we will become the gold standard.
Yep. And I mean, for the folks who don't know, like they just moved into a new office. They've just built this whole thing. You can see there's like drywall behind Dylan. Like they're setting up whiteboards. Or whiteboards. Yeah. They're setting up a whole new office. They're about to explode. There's going to be so much new stuff that they're putting out. We're really excited for you guys.
Thanks, man.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think that about covers it, guys. So thank you so much for watching. Let us know if you had any other questions. We might be able to circle back and answer some stuff in the comments. We'll try to do our own video of like creating those buckets on our end with Excel. But yeah, thank you so much, guys. And thank you, Dylan, for coming out and joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.